What is up, everyone? JD here. I hope you're all doing well today. Today, I'm going to be bringing you my carry knives for the week, talk a little bit about why they're in the pocket, what I'm enjoying about them, in hopes that it helps you have a little bit of an update in between the review and the long-term review. So on Monday, went with a micarta Monday theme, which is one of my favorites to do, and I carried the Savivi Sukoke. This one is a Ray Laconico design, black washed 14C 28N blade, really thin and slicey, great blade shape too for everyday carry, and it has micarta handles, really nice liner lock that's super comfortable in hand. It does come with a reversible deep carry pocket clip. It has the micarta backspacer, which matches the handle materials, good access to the lock bar, and it has just gotten smoother and smoother as I've had it. Also, that front flipper action, when I first got it, you could occasionally fail it, but honestly, as it has broken in, it's gotten really, really good. I haven't had it fail here too much recently carrying this one. But as I was mentioning, this is just a really nice carry. It has contoured scales, so really helping with the ergos there. This micarta is really well done. Even if you don't like the drab green with the fibers in between, it's really tacky, so it gives you a lot to grip onto, and it's, again, just hand melting ergos. I cannot tell you just how comfortable this is in hand. The blade, the 14C28N, came with a really good factory edge, really, really slicey. I've tested it opening some stuff, broke down a couple of boxes, and it's just performed so well. The access to the lock bar is really good. You have this jimping on the top, so if you wanted to open it a la European style knives, you can just kind of put your thumb on it, get it started, and send it home. But it did knock it down a little bit so that you can come in from the side, and you can get that to close that way, and then it is comfortable to lift up and close as well. So it has a lot of ways depending on your style of closing the knife, and the thumb studs work really well for thumb flick and reverse flick, and again, that has broken in nicely for that front flipper. This is just such a phenomenal knife for the money. I mean, for what you're paying and what you're getting, really fantastic ergos, and it's a non-offensive look. I know it's probably not a standout look, but it's really not offensive at all. It has a really good clean profile with clean lines. Just a fantastic model, and it just has really surprised me for the money. On Tuesday, I had the Kung Wu Tao in the pocket. Hadn't carried this one in a little while because I've had so many come in to the channel for review, so I wanted to grab this one and pick it back up. Wonderful M390 blade that has a really good heat treat to it. I believe it's 60 to 62, if I remember right. I might be wrong, so I'll try to remember to throw that up on the screen. Has a belt satin finish on the blade. Good profile too, really thin, tall, flat grind. It gets really thin behind the edges, so really nice and slicey. Good access to the lock bar. Front flipper detent is good, and detent for the flipper tab is really good as well. So I really like this one. It's a good thin profile for carrying in the pocket. They give you a nice titanium backspacer with a titanium standoff. My only real complaint on this is the pocket clip is very pokey. I feel that in hand no matter what. So I wish they would have just done a milled titanium pocket clip and went ahead and just did the knockdown to have that reversible. I think that would have worked a little bit better. Or they could have just thickened this up a little bit and had it swoop down, but then they would have had to open up the hole for the reversible. So being they wanted to design it the way that they did, that is one of my complaints. Great detent, feels very snappy, great jimping on the flipper tabs, both front and rear. Just a great knife for the money, for the heat treat. What you're getting, titanium, you're getting M390 at a proper heat treat. You're even getting a little Damascus on the pivot collar to give it a little bit of flair. So, you know, or a little bit of pop of color, I should say. So really well built. I continue to really enjoy that. It is just a very no-nonsense, straightforward design and really well executed, especially with the heat treat that you're getting on there. On Wednesday, I did dual carry. I had the Sharp by Design Mini Tempest. This is another M390 slicer, more gentlemanly or office carry friendly because it is a more sleek profile. You got a titanium frame lock that is slightly bolstered by the inlay here. You have a titanium pocket clip that is not reversible, but really clean lines on the show side, and you only have minimal hardware showing here on the non-show side. Good access to the lock bar. They give a little bit of lip here so that you can come in and get that no matter, again, how you like to get to that particular lock. Side, laying flat, pulling up. It really accommodates everything. And this on the skiffs has gotten even smoother. It's not too often I say with knives that I see with skiffs a difference, but it does feel like this has gotten incredibly smooth. It has remained centered. Jimping on that front flipper works really well. It has remained lock solid, no up and down, left to right side play in the pivot, and the reverse flick is really satisfying on the fuller. A little tight to get in there, but I can get in there very consistently to flip it. I don't think I've been able to thumb flick it. Nope. So I just deploy it with the flipper tab with the thumb, and then if I'm going to use the fuller, I'm using the reverse. Really nice. I think I did touch up the edge a little bit on this one, but I don't think since I've touched it up I've had to do anything with it. I did a little anodizing on the hardware. I need to go back and finish kind of softening the edge a little bit on the pocket clip just to remove the rest of the pokiness. It's almost completely gone, but I think I missed a little spot right out on the tip. And it is a full 4-finger grip, which I did forget to mention. Everything that you've seen on here, full 4-finger grip with plenty of room for the larger hands, and it works really well. So even though they call it the Mini Tempest, it's more of a medium-sized knife, and it really does work for a wide range of hand size because it is a little bit more slender in profile. They did go ahead and contour it a little bit and chamfer it down here, so that does help with how it feels in hand. But again, this to me is more of an EDC style knife that you would take into the office, or perhaps if you're going to a wedding or out somewhere where you want something a little bit nicer on you. That to me is definitely the type of knife that I think of, especially when you look at it size-wise compared to the Sukoke and the Tau, which are on the table. The other knife that I carried on Wednesday in the 5th pocket is the Hyphen. Really like this one. Just like the Roxy 3, it has really surprised me how much I've enjoyed carrying this. Now, it has a really beautiful anodized anodized finish on it. Anodized hardware. They did like a black wash and then anodizing and stone washing, it looks like. At least that's what it looks like. Pocket clip matches. Really good pocket clip coming from Wee. Probably the Gavco designed pocket clip, but I really like this a lot. Nice and wide so it doesn't feel hot in hand, and it works going in and out of the pocket really well. Actually, it's going in and out of the pocket so much that it has just a little bit of wiggle, so I do need to take it off and adjust it. Thumb studs are working really good. You can see I've flipped it a lot, so the ano is coming off ever so slightly. The hollow grind is nice and thin. This thing, when you want to break down an Amazon package, it'll just move right through the cardboard just to show you what that geometry is all about. Came with a really good factory edge, and it seems to be holding up really well. Access to the lock bar is a little tight, but it is a smaller knife, and again, I do have larger hands, but I can get in there. I just have to kind of wedge it in there a little bit more depending on how I'm trying to close it. I did install skiffs on this. Very smooth action. It will not be a guillotine because that hollow ground blade has almost no material. So with the detent on the lock bar being stout and the blade being light, it's never going to really just fall shut unless you're holding that lock bar out and letting it drop down to the nail. But again, really impressive being a smaller knife that it does accommodate all 4 fingers. And I have to snug it in tight to that back side of the forward finger choil to prevent it from touching, but I do have the space in there, which is really nice. And I think the other thing that I didn't realize when I was carrying it at first, this is sitting up higher, and then this drops down lower and kind of pushes down towards the pinky. So you have this kind of, the way it's working for me anyway, this is kind of landing in the meat on the palm, so it's keeping it nice and low, and then this being pushed down more, it gives more for that pinky and ring finger to grip onto. So for the push cuts, it ends up working quite well for the size. I don't know if that was intent, because it looked like it was just, you know, a design cue, but it works really well. And that blade shape, fantastic for utility purposes. Thursday, I went with a thumb stud Thursday, and I had to break out the Umanzan. I've had so many knives coming in that I've been trying to carry to form opinions for reviews that I just had to put this aside for a little while, and I really was missing carrying it, man. It's just ergonomically for a larger hand individual so nice to use. It has such a nice thin hollow ground blade, wonderful factory edge. This thing just cuts through everything I throw at it. I like the Tonto because it does allow me to use that for you draw cuts and utility cuts, meaning like when you're trying to get into packages or cut labels or things of that nature. Just such a fantastic knife that is so satisfying just to slow roll open and close. I know if you're a fidgeter, that may or may not work for you. To me, I really actually enjoy the deliberate fidgeting that you can get with this knife for opening and closing it. Before I forget to mention, this is the RGT pocket clip Rips Garage Tech, I think is what it's called. And I anodized this to match the hardware that came from Chris Reeves when I bought this from Chris Reeves for this Umanzan, and then I took the lanyard off of it. Just a little bit of pop of color, not too much. I like a little bit there. I think it's kind of nice to break up the monochromatic look on that on some knives. Other knives, I don't do that and leave them alone. On Friday, I went with a Framelock Friday knife. Had to break the relative back out. This is definitely one of my favorite new releases in the mid-pack premium. I know it's not like over the $500 threshold, but it is over the $300 threshold, and Bestech just did a phenomenal job on this. Love the milling on here. I love the satin or polished finish on the collar here for the hardware. The pocket clip works well. I think it's almost the same pocket clip that are on all EMP EDC knives. Looks like it has a little bit of a landing pad here. I don't know if I mentioned that in the review or not, but it does seem to go in and out of the pocket nicely. Titanium back spacer, not prioritized lanyard hole, that it's that slit, which I think looks good because it kind of sort of matches up with the thumb hole that's out on here. Access to the lock bar is really good. Thickness on this is what's made the difference for me. I love this so much I actually let my Nimble X go because I actually prefer the thickness on this, the access to the lock bar, access to the thumb hole and the fuller. Front tab has really good jimping on it, and it is tuned well so that it has a snappy, heavy detent for the reverse flick, for that thumb flick, and for the front flipper, which works great. Little close at first when I got this, but I did dial back the detent a little bit as I failed twice. But it has gotten a little bit easier to kind of manipulate it that way, but it's still very stout. Clip point on here has a Tonto blade. This one here probably will end up getting rounded out by me because it's so shallow. So like if you look at the Tonto here on the Umanzan, that one's probably going to be a little bit easier to maintain because it has such a direct turn. I can easily identify that, but this one here, it is a very shallow turn going up, and then it is so far back off of the flat that it's way down here. So I could probably end up kind of making this more of a Japanese Tonto or just a traditional clip compound grind versus what you see here on the Umanzan's Tonto, which is easier for me to identify, but we'll see when we get to that. I did install skiffs on here. It is very smooth on the close, very, very fluid on the open, and great access to that lock bar. I think I mentioned that, so I'm sorry if I'm repeating that. Jimping going all the way out. I appreciate that. Having the larger hands, I'm able to go way out on the knife. I have plenty of space back here. It's a 4-finger grip behind that finger choil, which is nice, but it's just so comfortable and natural here. The hollow grind, really, really thin, super, super thin. This thing slices well, and even the flat grind out here is nice and thin. It's not overly done. It comes down to a pretty shallow edge, but robust enough to make sure that you got a strong tip. I think this will be going out before EMP EDC drops the next batch, which is going to be LMAX. And at that same time that they do the pre-order drop, they're going to drop the leftovers for the 20 CV batch. So depending on your what tickles your fancy on what type of steel you want, you can check them out. But the relative to me just absolutely blows the Nimble out of the water as far as ergos go. If you're a fidgeter, it's probably not going to be as good because you do lose the flipper tab, but you still have the front flipper, the thumb hole for the reverse flick, and the thumb flick work great, and the fuller if you like to come down low and kind of kick it out with the inside of the thumb. So, and that's what I've been carrying this week, or that is what I carried this week. The Sukoke Hyphen surprising me. I've had love for these, and they're not going anywhere anytime soon. And the relative, I liked the Nimble X, but the relative is definitely, in my opinion, their best model. I love the revisions on this, and I look forward to seeing what else they do. Let me know what you've been carrying in your pockets here recently, and what have you picked up here recently that you're really enjoying. Doesn't even have to be a new model. Sometimes, like, I pick up used models and I end up really liking them. I just couldn't get a hold of them or get to them initially, and I see them on the secondhand market and grab them. So sometimes those are just as exciting and fun for me to pick up as well. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate the support. All the likes and comments really help. Thank you for everyone that does that. I hope all of you have a fantastic week, and until next time, peace.